And the more I looked at the 10 principles, or maybe it's 12, they kind of embody in another way all the one another stuff. There's some more people, Pam. Okay. John's got it. Good. The umpire is in action, huh? So, the first slide that was going to be up there was the principles slide as a reminder. I printed that two-sided card out. Yeah, great. I printed out that card with the principle table on the one side. What's on the back side, I think, came from the church that Nate and Adele used to go to in New Jersey. It's a great one-pager that talks about, what's it say at the top? I didn't give myself one. Yes, the attainable goal of every Christian. And if you look through that some other time, you'll see connections to what we've been talking about for one another. So I thought that could be something you might tuck away in your Bible or wherever to look at from time to time. Because, as I said a couple weeks back, this stuff, for me, is, I call them mirrors. It's something that you can look at and compare yourself to and say, I'm doing good in this area, maybe I could do a little better in this area. And that's one of the things that caused me to go through this whole thing for all these one another's. So, as I put on the sheet last week, I look at these as all building blocks. That we need humility to get humble enough to recognize that we need a Lord and Savior, and accept that and become a follower of Jesus. And then once we're saved by faith, that enables the righteousness in us that makes our prayers of the righteous effective, which is, I should have put in the verse references by these, but I didn't. And then realizing how much Jesus loved us to do what he did, gives us an example, teaches us how to love one another. And then that love of Jesus demonstrated through obedience to him, the whole love one another verses, creates the sort of the cause and the effect, the result that enables and builds unity, which we talked about last week. And then, at least the way I came to look at it, the integration of these four creates the opportunity, the ability, the responsibility to build one another up. That was last week, edification. And then putting these all together enables fellowship and service, both with one another, with Christians, but also to non-Christians. So at the end, I'm going to talk about something I was at all this prior week, which was in one part a training event for an organization that runs a thing called the Statesman's Academy. And the Statesman's Academy is a training and encouragement and mentoring and partnering thing for state legislators to teach them how to be a Christian in a state legislature and survive and be successful. It's a very interesting thing. So at the end of the week, they had 2 of the 32 people that went through the program last week just stand up and say a few things. And one of them, the gentleman got up and said, people used to ask me, why did you become a state legislator? And he said, I used to tell them something about wanting to help make policies, shape laws, et cetera. He said, after this week, I will tell people it's because I want to bring people to Jesus. That he recognized that his calling to be a state legislator was a way to not only do things with laws and policies, but to influence people and bring them to, by his example and others, to show Jesus in the flesh, so to speak. Okay, we'll come back to that a little more later. So fellowship and service, and I put those two together because I think they are linked in some ways. I think living out our faith through fellowship and service should embody, should show, should be based on and exemplify the things we talked about before: humility, prayer, love, unity, edification, the actions and principles we've been discussing these last few weeks. And that reminds me, Pam and I were looking at the list of the principles last night, and she was having trouble understanding what a couple of them meant. And if you look at the card, The first one on the right-hand side where it says concept, it's a positive statement now about if I'm healthy, I can help others be healthy. When I handed it out the first time, that first one was a negative statement. And as I said once before, it's hard to focus and succeed on a negative statement. You don't go to bat, right, John, and say, I'm not going to strike out, I'm not going to strike out. What is it you say to everybody? I'm going to hit, or keep your eye on the ball all the way to the bat, right? So if you are healthy, you can help others be healthy. But I put at the top of that, which wasn't on it the first time, the two verses that really kind of describe what the whole reciprocal living is about. The verses that say, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That kind of encapsulate reciprocal living and all the one another stuff that as Christians we should treat others the way we would want to be treated, and the list of principles and concepts is a way to do that. So I looked up the words translated into fellowship and service in the Bible, and koinonia is the word for fellowship, and I think there's more places it's used on the list I came up with. I only had this idea this morning. I woke up and go, oh, I should talk about these words. And yes, I wanted to say, I almost didn't go to the wiffle ball game last night. And I said to myself, wait a minute, you're going to talk about fellowship tomorrow. How does it look for the guy that's going to sit up in front and talk about fellowship not to go to the biggest fellowship event of the summer, so to speak? So if there's things out here that don't make sense, let me know, because some of it I finished up this morning. So koinonia is about close associations around mutual interests and sharing and working together to accomplish them. And service, interesting though, different words in English that the original language words is translated into. Some of them are nouns and some of them are verbs. So let's take a look at 1 John 1, 6 and 7. If we say that we have fellowship with him and yet walk in the darkness, we lie and do not practice the truth. But if we walk in the light as he himself is in the light, we have fellowship with one another, and the blood of Jesus, his son, cleanses us from all sin. So what is our first and most important fellowship? Jesus Christ. Coming into a relationship with Jesus. What maybe is our second?
And the rest of the church.
The rest of the church, yep, other Christians. And then kind of extending that idea, what could be a third? The general community, that was actually going to be the more. So the second, I think, could be split into two. We should have fellowship with other Christians one-on-one, and then we should have fellowship within the body to help even each of us within the body to grow and the whole body to grow so that all the parts can come together and be the whole. And then are there other places we could do fellowship besides those and with others in the community? I hadn't thought of it more beyond that myself, but I was waiting for one of you creative, thoughtful people to come up with one. So then I'll say, how do we do this? What are the core things we should do to live out fellowship? Besides just saying one another. Yes, who is that? Is that Tracy? Between the glare from the door and sometimes I can't see who's out there.
Be an example.
Be an example. Example of what?
Of love, of compassion, of service.
Yeah. All the things we've been
all
talking
those
about.
Things. Yes.
Yeah. The F item there. What example does Jesus' fellowship as shown in his 3 years of earthly ministry give us? So who was Jesus? I'm surprised there aren't multiple people giving instant answers. He's the Son of God, right? Yet what did he do? He came here to be with us. So he set as an example the great, I'll call it the first great act of fellowship. He chose to come with us, all sinners, so that we could have our sins, what's the word I want? Atoned for, that's a big word. So everybody he came to see was in fact a sinful person, yet he was holy because he was God. So what does that tell us we should do?
Be patient with other people.
Yeah.
Know that they're sinners as well, just like we are,
Yes.
and especially we're.
Yeah.
And encourage them to get right with him as we did as well.
And to a certain extent, it's the same whether they're other Christians or they're what I like to call not yet Christians. We should interact with all in a way that edifies them and helps them grow either with Christ or to Christ. And hopefully all this one another stuff will help us do that. So let's see, there were a couple points that I wanted to make from that verse. It says, have fellowship with him, which was the first fellowship. And then practice the truth, walk in the light, have fellowship with one another. If you look on the back side of the card, one of the pies off that card is about personal spiritual development, spending time in the Word. You can't lead people to some place you haven't been or aren't willing to go. So teach yourself, make yourself healthy, one of those principles, so that you're healthy enough to help others be healthy. All right, the Acts passage, which I left a couple verses out. So they, referring to the early church, they were continually devoting themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, there's that word again, and to the breaking of bread and to prayer. And they began selling their property and possessions and sharing them with all, as anyone might have need. Day by day, continuing together with gladness and sincerity of heart, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord was adding to their number day by day those who were being saved. So what are the actions associated with this kind of fellowshipping? I made up a word. Just like I made up a word, one anothering. What was that word, Jesse? Selfless behavior. So there was a verse in one of the first two times we were together. That's the verse in Philippians. I'm drawing a mental blank. Consider others more important than yourself, just as Christ did when he came here. It's Philippians 2 something, and I'm not remembering it well.
And, carrying each other's burdens.
Carrying burdens.
That's an action.
Yes.
And, if you see another individual that needs something, that is your opportunity to show them how much Christ loves them.
Right.
By your action.
Right. I mean, it was interesting as I was putting this together, how much it reminded me of what we've been doing the last 5 weeks or whatever it is. Yep. Other thoughts? Other actions associated with fellowshipping. And they're in those verses.
Spending time in each other's houses.
Right. Yeah, it talks about meals together with gladness and sincerity of heart. Like last night's wiffle ball game. All sorts of gladness. Uh-oh, John's going to say something. It's not a foul ball.
As you're talking about that, I was thinking about this gal I taught years ago. She lives in Miami, but she comes up here to help her mother. She lives over in Trumansburg, and her stepson was there. Those of you who were there might not have noticed him, except that he came out and played in the first game thing we did, and he's a bruiser of a guy, and he's a Catholic, and she was telling me, I don't know what the term was, something about fearful of going to another church other than a Catholic church. And I got talking to her and him about coming here, at least visiting here, because he won't be here. He's an aerospace engineer. He just graduated from whatever college. But she started talking to me, and she took notice of all of you who were there. And this is important. The fun that people, I can never tell if people are having a great time or not. I really don't. But she could tell the different people, like Mary was out doing YMCA and a bunch of people, and then a bunch of people singing. And I was trying to lead singing, and like I've said, I sound like a cat being choked. But she took notice of all of that. And then she says to me, I don't know if anybody noticed this guy. He was a student of mine. He always talks to me when he sees me around town. And if you were around him, you know, he was drunk. I don't know if anybody saw him last night. He was drunk. And it's her brother. And noticing all of you and how you were with each other, she said, can you make sure you guys pray for Tom? And I thought, how cool is that? He came on my list. He's on my list. I keep adding people onto my list every day. It's getting to be a long list now. But part of what I think we all know this, part of what people see talking about fellowship is, do Christians have fun? Or are they just a bunch of, they go in and sing and have, you know, the face with no smile and all that jazz. And she noticed that last night big time, which I thought was pretty cool. You know, the people in this church, there were a lot of people who weren't from this church there, but they notice you people let your hair down, and and they take notice that you cheer for the wrong things. Like when I got hit in the leg and went down, was seriously injured. Just saying, you know.
Well, and I think there's an underlying message in what John was describing. When we have events like that, whether it's a big church-wide event or just a small family-type event, if you can invite people who are maybe interested in the faith, or maybe haven't shown that, but if you can invite them into the fellowship and they can see what Christian fellowship is really like, that's powerful.
They said to there, he was begging last time. He didn't know.
He was what?
He was begging. He knew another game. Jeremy set it up. So he can't wait. They said, every time back up here, it's on the ball.
Yep.
And he saw that.
Tickets aren't that cheap.
Yep. So I put some examples down at the bottom of what fellowship looks like. We talked about the wiffle games. We do dish to pass meals. We just get together on Sunday and talk while nothing else is going on. We have the whole thing on Messenger with the messages where people share things and share prayer concerns. And we've already kind of talked about the other two. Let's move on to service. And I think there's this direct interface between service and fellowship. So 1 Peter 4:10, as each one has received a special gift, employ it in serving one another as good stewards of the manifold grace of God. And my question to you is, does this verse say anything about how big or how little, how much or how many? It just says to use your gifts. Or I was looking for another quote, and I found this one from Charles Spurgeon. The way to do a great deal is to keep on doing a little. And when I found that, it reminded me of the two examples I put in here. David's faith-filled attack and killing of Goliath. And what did it take? One stone from a sling. And everybody else told him, you can't do this. You're just a little shepherd boy. He had faith. He took what God had been giving him and said, I can do it. Or the other one, the young boy sharing of 5 loaves and 2 fish that led to the feeding of thousands. And to me, it's a way to understand that is start with what you can do, with what you have, what God has put in your life, and see where God takes you and takes it. There's been great ministries started by one person with no idea that it would become huge, but they were faithful. They listened to God, they listened to the calling, and they started. Can anybody think of examples of those? Yes, Lydia.
Day I was reading in like the book Case for Christ, Lee Strobel, and there was like an interview of him, and he was saying, Mr. You should like relate to this. He was saying in baseball, sometimes, you know, you have a pop-up and it just gets caught, and other times the wind hits it just right and it flies like out and it's a home run. And he was saying that he felt like he was just faithful and he wrote his book, and then God just took it away. And I mean, through the Case for Christ, like it's a really, like there's millions, there's a lot of copies of it, and a lot of people have like drawn close to God through it. But Lee Strobel, he seemed very like humble in his interview. He was saying like, you know, God just like, I wrote the book, I made contact with the ball, and then God just, you know, brought it much higher.
And again, the importance of humility. I have seen more than a couple people who were in some type of ministry, and their lack of humility, their pride, they ended up crashing and burning. It's unfortunate. Anybody think of any other examples of something that started little, turned into something huge?
I mean, just look at Charlie Kirk and look at his legacy. I mean, you know, he started out as a high school student that saw how public education was so wrong in Illinois, and he took a stand and he started a conservative movement in order to, you know, draw people closer to Christ. Ultimately, that was his ultimate goal, and he never shied away from that.
Yep.
And, you know, from videos you see and other people's testimony, he really has left a legacy and a lasting mark on this nation and around the world for the things that he did.
Right. And we think of those great, I think Adele's got one.
I was just going to say, not an example of something that was small and started huge, but just something small can be huge. Last night at the game, there was Lincoln. Their last name starts with a V.
Rhonda.
Yeah. And I was thinking, when we first moved here, we visited the church that they go to in Trumansburg, and I had this great conversation with their Amy, the mom. And I remember, like, I saw her last night, and she made me feel so welcome and loved. And when you're new and just like, she's no idea that conversation has an impact on me, but she was just warm and welcoming for 10 minutes one day.
Yep.
Right? Like, you have no idea your cold shoulder or your warm embrace, how that will impact someone.
Yeah. Which is why I put the question in there. Does it say anything about big or little? We should do what we feel called to do, living out the principles, living out the one another's. And if it affects one person, great. If it affects 100 people, great. It's like the video that I showed when we were back in the other sanctuary, the black man. At the end, he talked about how whether it's 1 or 1,000 or millions, we can't all be Billy Grahams and impact millions, but we can impact those around us. Or it's the story of the starfish, the kid throwing the starfish back into the ocean. It matters to everyone. So John had his hand up first, and then Mary.
I just wanted to throw it in because of what you said. I was looking at my phone because Amy, I put something out about the 15th, and she says, we're coming. I don't want Lincoln to come because he's the one that crippled me yesterday, but I just looked, and the girl I was talking to you about and her son, she's going back to Miami here shortly, but her message was, we're going to be there. And you know why? Because of you people.
Yeah, all of us together.
Yeah.
Yep.
We have to build a stadium.
All right, Mary's waiting over here to say something.
Multi-tiered seating.
So Franklin Graham was the Graham's prodigal son years ago. He was very rebellious, and then Samaritan Purse,
Yep.
Operation Christmas Child.
Yep.
So,
And some of you may know this, you may not. When we had the flood that wiped out Lodi, et cetera, in 2018, Salvation, the Samaritan person came here. They set up camp at the Seneca Community Church, and I got to interface with some of the people, and they were here within like 2 days. And I asked the guy, how do you find out that there's a need that you can mobilize and you can get here in like 2 days? He said, we have a team of people that monitor the news and look for disasters that they could go to and help people. It's amazing, their response time. And they were handing out, the thing I got involved in was distributing, I won't call them tracts, but distributing information about the Christian faith to the homes of the family that were served. Because there's a whole evangelistic piece of their ministry. All right, I want to move on to what I mentioned before. So I'm going to skip the Ecclesiastes verse. So if we can put up the next slide, Keith, the number 10, I think it is. No, 11. Yeah. Yeah, that one. Can you read that, or is it too washed out? So last week, as a board on a ministry called New York Families, which is a state-level organization, as Jason describes it, we seek to influence legislation and legislators for the Lord Jesus Christ. They are one of 39 official organizations called Family Policy Centers. There's one of those. There's 39 states that are part of this alliance of these groups, and they have linked up with another. They've basically created another larger organization that's on more of a national focus called Family Policy Alliance, and they hold a conference once a year called the Social Conservatives Policy Conference, which is where I was from 5 o'clock Monday until 11 o'clock Friday. And they kept us busy 14 hours a day. There were about, so this is the motto. They talk about a movement, and this is the motto, the vision, the goal of the movement: to create a nation where God is honored, religious freedom flourishes, families thrive, and life is cherished. So these 39 organizations that have formed a pact together that's documented. There's responsibilities and expectations. There are other organizations that are doing similar work, but they haven't formally joined the alliance. They have been working on this for somewhere between up towards 30 years. And the focus of the event is to do things, share things around this theme. Next slide. So I mentioned there's 39, it says 39 plus because there are other groups out there that haven't formally joined the alliance. What's that, 1.2 million citizens mobilized. So there are people engaged in various ways with all these 39 groups. And there are over 500 legislative policy things accomplished typically every year. The reason I wanted to share this is it dawned on me a couple days into the week that what I was involved in, what I was seeing and experienced was a tremendous level of fellowship, of living out all the stuff we've been talking about on a national level. That these people, there were people there from, I think, every state, I'm not sure that, over 100 Christian organizations that are working together to accomplish the first slide. They are the people that came up with the idea and created the Read the Bible in a Week thing that happened earlier this summer. They run a group called Christians Engaged, which is about getting Christians, encouraging Christians to get out and vote, and a whole lot of other programs. And they work very closely with an organization called Family Research Council, which came out of Focus on the Family programs and went separate, so to speak, to focus on things. And they just do a bunch of stuff to try to live out those policy items. Let's see what the next one is, Keith. Yes, so what I wanted to make you aware of is there is this nationwide effort of Christians to try to do things with laws and policies to accomplish those four goals, where God is honored, life is cherished, families are enabled, and whatever the fourth one was. And it's small, it's state level, but because they work together, because they work on it together, as one of the head guys of the Alliance said more than once during the week, individually, in other words, one family policy center, we could not accomplish what we've been accomplishing over the last few years because we work on it together. I mentioned the Statesmen's Conference. Some of the people that were state legislators and went through the Statesmen's Conference to learn how to be a state legislator as a Christian have gone on to be members of Congress. There were at least 2 members of Congress that did the morning devotions for us. It's the very well biblically based devotions. I recorded almost all of the audios, and I'm going to try to put them up somewhere to share them. They also run a thing, I think it's, okay, this picture I put up here, if you look at the things that they're focused on, there's some of the things we've been talking about, right? How do we love? Through evangelism, discipline, teaching, rebuke, correction, which exposing evil and opposing evil. That particular is what needs to happen in some places dealing with governmental bodies. Advocating biblical policy. One of the speakers, I'll do that later. What's the next slide, Keith? Okay, so this is the map of the blue states are the states. So the people that go to the Statesman's Academy are nominated by their state's family policy council as someone that would benefit from this. So the blue states are states that have sent people. There's somewhere around, I think, 350 that have gone through the program in the last 10 years. Unfortunately, the white states haven't for various reasons. And you'll notice New York is a white state. Jason has been trying to find someone who would want to do it. It's hard in the current political environment in New York State. But there are people from all those states that have been trained to be a legislator as a Christian, that can network with each other and help each other do a better job. One example that came out from that during the conference, they gave an award to this legislator. She was from, I think, Louisiana, and she had been working for several years, it's now passed, working on legislation requiring when someone downloads an app for their phone from Google or whatever the one is for iPhones, that they have to somehow show that they're 18, and if they're not, they have to get parental approval. I don't know how that works, but when they started, they knew that Google and Apple would be trying to stop them. And they took a lot of resistance from them. So they engaged some of their partners through the Alliance and then got legal counsel to create a law that could survive the Supreme Court because they knew it would go there. And it did, and it survived. And they did another one. What was the other one? The same woman did another one that I can't remember. And then that legislation can serve as a model for other states because they know it'll survive the court pressure. Let's see what else we got. What's the next slide, Keith? Okay, this talks about the School Board Academy. They also run an academy for current or future school board members, how to be a Christian school board member and live out your life as a Christian and import biblical values into the school board. One of the other board members, he's a pastor, and you may know him, Jesse, Justin Bloor from the Berean Bible Church. Yeah, they succeeded in getting 3 people elected to their local school board from one of their 5 churches. Again, working together to influence society and culture from a biblical perspective. What's next, Keith? All right, so they have an award. I don't know if you can read the words. Some of the slides, when I took pictures of them, there was a column in the way. So they give an award out to, I think it's a federal level person who has lived out those 4 principles, the first slide. This year's award went to Marco Rubio. And this was his little bio thing that they put up there. And if you notice, I don't know if, can anybody read the bottom line? All right, unapologetic witness for Jesus Christ. He couldn't be there to receive the award because I think he was out of the country because of Iran. But he recorded a video that was played for us. And he thanked us for the award and spoke about living out his life as a Christian in his job as the U.S., what's the right word? Secretary of State. Next slide. So this was a picture of him on the video while he was talking to us. And it was just, again, all throughout the week, you find out about these people in various levels, particularly the federal level, that are solid evangelical Christians that are trying to live out their biblical values as they influence policies and laws. What's the next one, Keith? Okay, so this on the right, on your right, is Tony. On the left is Tony Perkins, who's the head of the Family Research Council. And on the right is Speaker Mike Johnson. And he came and spent about an hour in front of all of us in the closing event Friday morning. And at first they just took questions. And then Family Research Council does a weekly Washington Watch. It's a report from Capitol. I think it's video. Yeah, they recorded it as video, so it must be out there in the net somewhere, a video. So then they recorded this week's session live in front of all of us. And we had cues on when we were supposed to applaud, and it was fun. But it was so interesting to interact with the Speaker of the House and hear how he lives out his faith, trying to influence. And his history, if you don't know it, I didn't realize his history. He went from being involved with the Family Policy Council in Louisiana, I think it was Louisiana, to being, I think he was put into a state level legislator role as fulfilling somebody's term. And then he either ran for and was elected to Congress or got to Congress fulfilling someone's term. And that was like a 2 or 3 year period of time. So here's a person that I don't think he went through the Statesman's Academy, that went from state level activities to the Speaker of the House. One of the things that he told us is that he interviews any person running for a House of Representatives position. He interviews them, and one of the key things he looks for is what is their worldview, and is their worldview close to a biblical worldview? And as he put it, he said, I want workhorses, not show horses. I don't want somebody that wants to pad their resume by being a congressman. I want people to get in here and join the battle to transform our country towards those 4 values again. Is there one more picture, Keith? I think that might have been the last one. Yeah. So again, the reason I wanted to share all this is it was so encouraging to me to learn how many people in different groups and organizations are engaged in trying to impact society and culture from a biblical perspective. It was overwhelming. There were speakers. There was a couple of speakers that were speaking into the abortion side of things. There's a group, actually it's a group aimed at college students. They did some research and said, wait a minute, over 65% of abortions in the country today are done using the pill. I can't say that word, begins with M. That it does a pill in the privacy of your own home, so to speak, does an abortion. It's becoming the major way which abortions are done. They said, wait a minute, are there residues of that pill that end up going out into the sewer systems because of what happens in those abortions? And they figured they got somebody to help them figure out a way to measure it, and it's like 10 times the level that it should be for any kind of something in the water that you don't want in the water. and they're going to try to use that to influence legislation, change laws. There's a doctor who has started a ministry, a website called something like Docs for Life, pro-life docs, and he showed us a bunch of stuff, all aimed at saying the baby in the womb is a person. And one of the points he made is the number of types of surgeries that are done in the womb. And he showed us an animation of a baby having open heart surgery in the womb. They basically do a C-section. They reach in and they take the baby's arms out so they can put a PICC line into it and give the baby anesthesiology and pain meds so that the baby stays still while they open up the chest of the baby in the womb and remove this mass that had formed in the womb that would eventually cause the heart not to be able to beat. And in one of the points he made, he showed a picture of the operating room when that was being done to a patient a few years ago. He said there were 2 anesthesiologists because there are 2 patients. And then he showed us picture of this young girl as a baby, as a few years old, up to about 7 or 8 years old, I think, very recent. But he's put together a 10-lesson video curriculum to use with people, to talk to them about the perspective of the baby as a person. I could talk much longer than I have time to talk about all the things I learned this week. Does this prompt any questions before I close? In what way? Oh, yes. So there is an organization, I don't remember the name of it, that does an analysis of the 50 states to see where they stand on the idea of religious freedom, religious liberty. The last survey data came out very recently, and New York went from 46th place to 50th place. Based on their surveys, New York State is the worst state for religious liberty. And I put in here, the bottom 5 are Vermont, Michigan, West Virginia, and California. The top 5 are Arkansas, Tennessee, Florida, Montana, and Illinois. And I met people from, I think, all 5 of those very religious freedom states. And that's where you learn about what they are doing, and they're setting precedents that could ripple across the country, or at least to other states. And New York, unfortunately, is the 50th. But we're trying, little by little. Any other questions? As you can tell, I'm very excited about last week. All right, anything closing? Yeah, so these family policy councils, among other things, they work to advance biblical values through civic engagement, that, like you and me, to move our nation increasingly towards a place where God is honored, religious freedom flourishes, families thrive, and life is cherished. And they promote the values of faith, family, and freedom by equipping citizens, churches, and elected officials to create laws and policies that lift up families, protect children, defend parents' rights, and more. More than one of the speakers talked about how families, if you look at the Genesis, right, Jesse? Genesis, Adam and Eve, created by God, it's the first institution ordained by God to be a family and to go forth and multiply. The other big institution created by God, any takers on that one? What happened because of Jesus? Jesus created the church. And these groups are focused on enabling the family and the church to do it right, to do it biblically, and to promote laws that enable that to happen. They talked a lot, I'll do one more, about there were these 2 guys from the Heritage Foundation, another Christian organization. We actually had dinner one night at their place. So what happened starting in the 60s with all the welfare support, the current tax laws and welfare support system, the tax laws are punitive on married versus single, and the welfare system makes it economically attractive to have more children as a single mom. And as the guy said, if that's what you do, it's not surprising where we are today. And so they're working on changing tax laws to turn it around and make things favorable to families. And one of those is a thing I learned about first this week. As part of the big, beautiful bill, there is a thing created that states have to either opt in or opt out of, where we as taxpayers can have up to $1,700 of the taxes that we pay. We can say, I want them to go to what's called a scholarship granting organization, and that money can go to a student or to a school. It's part of enabling school of choice type things. So Jason is working to start an SGO here. So imagine if 1,000 people in New York State gave $1,700, that's 1.7 million. Or suppose there was 10,000 people, that's 17 million, and that money can go to kids going to Christian schools or to schools to help run their program. And that all is one of the things that came out of these people working to make policies that are great for families. So we got to close. Thank you for your listening to me ramble on about this. Father, thank you for our time together this morning. Thank you for those near and far that are working to move our country towards one that honors you. I pray in your Son's name. Amen.